Jesus has spent 40 days in the Judean wilderness. No food, no water, fasting to purify his soul, to test himself. And now the test has come. The adversary has arrived and the temptations are upon him. And the devil takes him up on top of a mountain, a place of revelation, and shows him all the kingdoms of the world and says, all you have to do is bow down, prostrate yourself right here and worship me, and I will give you all these things and the glory therein. And Jesus says, get behind me, for only the Holy One do you serve, and only him do you worship. This is a man living under the colonizing authority of Rome. Not far away, the entire town of Sepphoris had been burned to the ground. His mother and grandparents were refugees from that town. He knew the brutality of the Romans. And it seems like such a good deal. Just bow down. Just bend a knee. Touch your forehead to the ground and you will have power over them. You'll be able to tell them what to do, make them stop doing all of the bad things. Why wouldn't you want to do that? As Jesus says in a different passage, what good is it if a man inherit the entire world and yet lose his soul? Today, we're talking about why Jesus refused empire and refused to have dominion over the kingdoms of this world as we walk together down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I'm a Christopagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan druid and sous chef to the Dagda.
Today, we are going to be talking about the refusal of empire and why on earth, in heaven above, or in the cosmos itself, would Jesus turn down what sounds like, on face value, such a good gift? I know a lot of people, when they're offered this kind of power, just bend the knee, because it's quicker, easier, more seductive. Oh, wait, that might be a hint to where we're going with all of this. But before we get into all that, I just want to welcome you here to this podcast. We accept everyone here, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter what your education is, no matter what. Everyone is welcome here. No one is behind. We've been going through an entire series called Kingdom Rising, which is about nonviolent resistance and the nature of the gospel, which is the liberation of all people here, now, in this world, not in the afterlife, because that's how Jesus taught it. So you can go over to CreationsPaths.com and read the articles over there if you want. We even have an article specifically about this topic here, which is going to go into it in a lot deeper level than we're going to be able to get to on this podcast. So I highly recommend that you go check that out. We're going to talk about the themes from it today so that we can just kind of dig in even further into these ideas. And I hope you come along with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology is on whatever app you're listening to us on. We have a lot of this kind of work coming, and I hope you're there with us along the way. All right, let's just get into it now, shall we? So,
Yeah.
Brian, why wouldn't he take this? Why not just bend the knee? It'd be so easy. You don't have to be crucified. Just bow down.
That's it. Just prostrate yourself and you get all these wonderful things. I mean, who doesn't want to be a ruler, emperor? I mean, it worked out so well for the emperors of Rome. Just don't shower with your friends because they might end up stabbing you to death. Or
careful if they follow you into the bathroom.
Yeah.
Don't be in the house while you're sleeping. Don't let them follow you when you're outside. Yeah.
I've got a weird mashup in my head right now of Yoda and Hamlet. And a little Othello in there too. And it's like, yep.
Yeah.
Heavy is the crown. And it's just one of those things. It's like those things are tempting, but they come at such a high cost. And I think that's something that a lot of us miss is the actual expense, even in that temptation there. Because somebody thinks, well, you just prostrate yourself. But that's the thing is like, you're going to have to turn your back on life, on God, on the cosmos, on life itself to do that.
One of the things that I talk about in the article is, I think, a passage which I jokingly said has never been taught in an evangelical church. And I always say that because we never talked about this when I was a member of an evangelical church. And the one time I tried to bring it up, it was just there's a longer version of that in Matthew. Let's go read that instead. Because Matthew, yes, has the blessings, but does not have the woes. Luke has the woes. And this to me sounds so much more like the prophetic message of John and like Jesus throughout the rest of the scripture. And it shows exactly what the danger in just bowing down.
Yeah.
The wealthy have their consolation. These people who just bow down for the wealth, for the power, for the glory. Once you have wealth, fear arises and suspicion arises. Is somebody going to take it away from you? Do people really care about you, or do they care about the fool? And it becomes isolating. And you can see this clearly in Jesus' teachings, that wealth, power, glory are isolating. They separate people from one another in a way that the only thing that they truly have is that wealth, power, or glory. They don't actually have any relationships. They don't have anything else in their lives. And we can see this historically over and over and over again as this gets borne out. We can see this in celebrities who may have started a music career when they were young and then got to the point where they were so suspicious of everyone around them. Are you here because you like me or because you like the proximity to my fame and money? There is an isolating factor that comes into that kind of attention and wealth that most people don't think about.
That's the temptation part of it, is it is quick and easy. It's a quick and easy path to power, but the cost is so high. It's a thing. Yeah, you can get ahead by stepping on somebody else. But the thing is then that's on your conscience. That's something that you have to live with the rest of your life. And you've now created enemies that are going to, not only is that going to haunt your conscience, even if you're able to detach yourself from your consciousness, which is then doing even further damage to yourself, your psyche, and your soul, you have these enemies that are now out to get you. And you're going to have to constantly look over your shoulder or a wanted person. Once again, to make that Star Wars reference, death mark is not a nice thing to have to live with.
It's like that wonderful quote from an American president that if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. And we actually see this as something that even Nixon got a dog when he moved into the White House. Checkers, very famously. And we see this as just this repeated thing because you don't know who is there to get your power, to get your authority, to get you to sign on to things, who's just buttering you up and who actually wants to know you. And that makes power extremely isolating. And when you look at the way of Jesus, it is all about building connections and relationships. Before the three woes, there are three blessings. Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So the poor possess the kingdom. That makes sense because they are living more readily and naturally in that right relationship because they have to support one another just to get by. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will laugh. Why? Because they have people with them that are going to help them get through their grief and are going to get them back to a place where they can laugh again. And we see this connection over and over and over again in Jesus' teachings, and that it is about building these networks of people, that it's how we take care of each other. In fact, when asked how we will know who is going into the world to come and who will be left in the refuse bin of history, Jesus lays it out very carefully. Those who fed the hungry, gave water to the thirsty, clothed the naked, helped those who tended to those who were sick in prison. They're the ones that are going to be going on into the world to come. And everyone else is cast out into Gehenna, where there's not but weeping and gnashing of teeth. I don't think that that is really a statement about some future health state. I think that's a statement about right now. I think you can go on social media and see these people gnashing their teeth because they have made themselves so isolated, so alone. You can see them in that hell state now.
You really can. That's one of those things that I love the verses you brought up in this, because the thing is, it's not that money is evil or bad. It's that it is a tool. It is a tool of this world. And so if you're trying to fill yourself, fill your life, and get satisfaction from money, you will never have enough. You will always need more because you're going to have to spend it on something else that is going to probably deliver false promises of some kind of satisfaction, of an experience of being alive. Because it's that experience of being alive, that's what actually fills us. That's what sustains us. That's what we all crave. All humans crave that. So you see, like in that passage, when they came to Jesus asking about paying taxes, it was this crazy trap that they set up. It was really a brilliant trap in the moment. And Jesus asked them to bring one of the Roman coins to him. And I was like, whose face is on this coin? Because that's the thing he was really saying in that moment. That's a tool of this world. You can use it as a tool. It's not evil. It's not good. It's not bad. It is none of that because it is just what it is. And so, that's why it's easier for the poor to inherit the kingdom, because they're able to actually seek out those experiences of being alive rather than being distracted by this false promise.
I want to dig into that a little bit more, because that experience of being alive is such a powerful, I think, core motivator for most of us. The power of myth, Joseph Campbell is famously asked, do you think people are looking for meaning? Do you think people are going to all these old stories for meaning? And he says, I don't think people care about meaning. I think they're looking for the experience of being alive. That's what they find in these stories, is people who are living their most vital self and examples on how to do that. When I look at the world, when I see those people that have isolated themselves through wealth, fame, and power, their experience of being alive becomes limited to these things that either risk their life so that their heart pounds and they become aware of, oh, wow, I am alive, right? They start doing very dangerous ski slopes. They start climbing mountains, jumping out of helicopters and airplanes. They start taking on riskier and riskier hobbies just for that thrill of, oh, this could kill me, but I survived. I feel alive. And
adrenaline is a chemical addiction or dependency, just like other drugs.
And I think that's where a lot of the drug abuse also kind of comes in, is it becomes a surrogate for this experience of being alive, because it either softens the feelings of pain that we have in this world, or it subsumes us and takes us into a blissful state that we feel we are denied in our regular life. And when we look at the way communities can and do work, people that kind of are living this kingdom lifestyle tend not to fall into those traps, because they're finding those experiences of being alive, hanging out with their friends, talking with other people, having just basic experiences of, let's make a meal together, let's eat a meal together, let's go watch a movie together, let's go to a concert together, let's just sing together. They are experiencing life together, which, again, going to what Jesus was saying, is something that when you don't have the money to go out and do the extravagant things, these are the things that you find to do. When I think about my great-grandparents who were born in the 1880s and 1890s, they had a song for everything. They had just every story that they had was about getting together with so-and-so and telling stories, telling jokes, singing together. And that's how they lived their life. When I think about poor people, I have my great-grandfather's diary. And the one thing in there that gets me every time I go back and I read it is one year he has an entry in there where he wrote 3 pumpkins, 2 jars of pickles, and a chicken. Very good year. That was his salary. That's what he got paid for a year of working as a minister. A couple pumpkins, some jars of pickles, and a chicken. Very good year. It says big writing right next to it. Very good year. Because these were things that would sustain him. That chicken was going to provide eggs. That chicken was going to provide so much for the family. And it's something that probably cost the people around him a lot. They had to give up one of their chickens or raise that chicken or buy it for him. It was something that was meaningful. But the work he did mattered. And so it wasn't about wealth or fortune. And I just look at that little list and I see that really big, I mean, you can see Brian's seeing the page, these joyful letters, very good year. I can't imagine anyone today getting paid that for a year's work and not grumbling about it. And I'm not saying that we should be grateful just to get a couple of pumpkins, jars of pickles, and a chicken. I'm not saying that's how we should be paid today, It's just, we have divorced ourselves from this world that he grew up in so much that seems like this alien foreign land that he must have been living in to even remotely perceive that as a good year. Even more so, as he wrote in his journal, a very good year. But he was an integral part of his community. He was there to help everyone if they got sick or their animals got sick. He was there with everyone. When he died, the funeral home was just filled with people who knew him, their kids, their grandkids, their great grandkids, all of whom had stories about what Doc meant to their family. I still have people to this day, and mind you, he died in the 1980s. I have people to this day that when they realize that I'm related to him, pull me aside and tell me stories about Doc and how he helped with this, that, or the other, or was there for so-and-so in their family when they needed someone. That's treasures in heaven. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, his memory is so full in the area because he was there with the people and for the people and living in this kingdom lifestyle. It wasn't about, he was poor. Like, they were very poor. They grew with the crops that they ate. They had, if the chickens didn't lay the eggs and the crops didn't come in, they didn't eat. He'd go down to the river and fish for food. You know what I'm saying? Like, they weren't living in some extravagant wealth. They had a little shack out in the middle of the country, but they were happy because of the community that they had around them. And that's what Jesus is really talking about here, about that community, about that life that we could and should be building.
That was something else that I really found interesting from the essay, that this resistance isn't like, I'm going to pull a sword and fight. You know, we've talked about that before in the earlier episodes. It is simply setting up a boundary, not a battle. When the temptation was happening, it wasn't like Jesus didn't punch Satan in the face or the devil in the face, the tempter in the face, or attack him, or he just simply set up a boundary and was like, you are not an obstacle for me. That's what the get thee behind me is all about. You're not an obstacle for me. I'm going forward. And they were left outside. And I thought that was also really interesting because growing up, I know you definitely heard it. And I heard it a little bit. You'd hear sermons or people citing this very verse and going, yeah, this is why we fight the devil and go out and do battle and stuff. Kingdom Rising is all about being against that kind of thinking. It's that kind of thinking that allows Christians to do violence against Christians. We were looking at these two very good videos that were put together on Genetically Modified Skeptics channel and on Drew's channel.
Drew did a really good job with those.
Did a really good job. It's titled Our Evangelical Christian Universities Were CIA Assets. And we're going to put links to them down in here. It's basically a modern day example of how when those preachers were called up on the mountaintop by the tempter, by Satan, and was tempted for power and wealth and control, they prostrated themselves.
They bent that knee. They went
bent that knee so fast. Like, talk about bruised knees. You know, it was just really sad. It was fascinating because they had there's a lot of receipts in there, declassified documents with oil companies, papers and plans that once they bent their knee, they were willing to step on the necks of indigenous people and help colonize and take control of, how they used it to persecute and murder fellow Christians, even.
Much worse. So as you may or may not know, we practice CreationSpirituality, and our sister cousin, I don't know how to do familiar relationships between idea structures, but a very closely related, and we all descend from the same source in South America, is liberation theology. And part of what Drew talks about there is the Banzer plan, where they weaponized as a form of psychological warfare white evangelical Christianity against the people of South America and Central America in order to destabilize the governments that were there for the colonialist extraction of wealth, and how quickly those institutions bent the knee to do it. It's heartbreaking in a lot of ways, but it's not unexpected. One of the reasons we talk about Augustine so much is Augustine is one of those people in history who just quickly bent the knee and gave into the empire of Rome and co-signed everything that they were doing for the most part. And we have these folk
He
throughout
literally
history.
gave us sin.
He created the
Original sin.
idea of original sin to justify imperial power.
Misogyny. You have to really further misogyny too.
Especially for a movement that had so many powerful women in it. But that's another episode that we've both done in the past and we'll probably do again in the future. But it's important to remember when we talk about the imperial church, we're not just talking about Martin Luther aligning with the German princes so that they could have empires separated from the Holy Roman Empire, though that did happen. We're not just talking about the Archbishop of Canterbury and others siding with Henry VIII so that he could have his empire and break away from the Roman Catholic Church. This is a trend that happens throughout history, and we literally could do an entire episode of just naming people who, unlike Jesus, didn't say, "Oh, beyond Satan," but bent the knee. And it's important to see that this happened recently. You know, I don't know how many of you listening know names like Pat Robertson or Jerry Falwell, but they co-signed all of this and were a part of this. Oral Roberts University was a part of this. SIL, which is one of the groups that did Bible translation work, was a part of all this. They bent the knee, knowing what they were doing. They were not ignorant. They were not kept in the dark because they put their own power, wealth, and interest over that of others. And that, I'm trying to get comfortable with saying this out loud because it sounds so tinfoil hatty because they've made it sound tinfoil hatty. But this is the spirit of Antichrist. It's important to remember that Antichrist is nowhere used in Scripture to mean a person. There is not an Antichrist in the Bible. That idea doesn't crop up until Luther and the Pope were having a bit of a spat. It doesn't really crop up until before them. That would be when, what was it, Friedrich the Third? I get lost in the numbers. And the Pope were having a spat. And he was named both Antichrist and Defender of the Faith alternately, depending on who the Pope was and what period of history we're in. But that was a political designation that came in thousands of years into Christianity. The idea of Antichrist is those that are working against this idea of love and unity, but still using its name. And that has been with us since the beginning. We can see it mentioned in the letters of John. It has always been with us, and it is with us today. And we have to be willing to call it out. And I know I have a hard time with that because it has gotten tied up into so many anti-Semitic tropes so that it could be used by powerful people to demonize the Jewish community and others, that it is a term that has almost lost all meaning. But the spirit of Antichrist is alive and it is amongst us, and it goes by the name of Evangelical Christianity. And I think the verdict is in. When you see evangelical leaders writing books like The Sin of Empathy, thinking that Jesus would co-sign that the God who said, "I want your love, not your sacrifice," would co-sign that.
That's the thing, is this is all about when Jesus said we can only serve one master. There is only one master we can serve. It's just a matter of who are we serving. And you can clearly see they are serving power, they're serving wealth. That's their master. They're not serving life.
And the counterpoint to that is Jesus said, if you are going to be counted as greatest amongst the kingdom, you must be a slave to all. We cover this up in the English by using the term bond servant. I see that in a lot of translations, the bond servant. No. The servants are those who volunteer their time to lead the church. And if we have no leaders, we have servants, not servant leaders. That's another thing that they created to create patriarchal control in the church. We have servants, deacons, those whose job is service. And if anybody wants to be great, it very clearly says they must be slave to all, not obeyed by all, but in complete abject obedience to all, in service of everyone. And that's not what these folk who like to call themselves Christian leaders do.
And that's something else I like to just briefly touch on as well, is this temptation, when it happens, and it happens in our daily lives, is real. These offers of power and wealth are real, but we need to keep in mind the cost. Once we choose to serve power and wealth, that there is an enslavement to that once that happens. which is why refusal is actual true power, because the power then stays with us. We keep it. We don't have to hand it over, because all those other individuals, they handed that power over and they spent the rest of their lives being dictated to and driven. Service replaces hierarchy, because then in the kingdom, we are all on that same playing field, because we're all serving life and we're all serving. That's why it's better, because then we all have.
It's better for a high tide to raise all ships than for one ship to get so high that when the wave crashes back down again, it breaks into and sinks to the bottom of the ocean.
So when you're going about this week, I was just going to ask everyone, all about practice and trying to embody this. Take a brief pause, take a breath, and notice where your body tightens when power is mentioned. And let that awareness just be enough for now. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to resolve it. Just be aware of that tension and when it happens.
And you'll start seeing where they're trying to co-opt you and get you to bend that knee. Remember, they make money off of us when we're angry on social media and yelling at each other. Is yelling really the best thing? Is that where we're encountering power? I see a lot of people leaving social media, but there's no thought going into it. I see a lot of people talking about boycotting this and boycotting that, but you have to ask, what is the power that we're both taking back and or relinquishing? If we give up our voice, if we silence ourselves, are we winning? What kind of voice should we have? Just really start feeling for yourself, because I don't have an answer here. I'm not saying with all of the boycotts and all of the other things that are bubbling around out there, which ones we should or should not be taking part in. I think that very much comes onto our individual conscience. But when you're feeling around to where do you feel the power here, I've noticed with some of these people trying to show their own power. See, I can say, put out the word, and this many people do exactly as I say. Well, I don't want to empower someone like that. If we're actually doing a collective action that will bring our voice forward, we have to start looking at where is that power concentrating? It's going somewhere. Every time we say yes or no, that's power being moved somewhere. Just be mindful. Where is it going?
Yep. And it's through that meditation and prayer that we enter that peace that passes all understanding. It's the mindfulness that keeps us clear in the present moment that we're in. It's the compassion that burns in our hearts, stepping forward into the work that must be done. That kavana and intention that becomes clear to be about the work of healing and restoring. That's why we always talk about, what are you building? That's when you're in service to life, building and creating. And it's the effort that's necessary to get us there.
Even a wildfire builds a forest. If we're just setting things on fire so that they can burn, we're not building. But the undergrowth has to catch fire. A pine cone often has to burn to cast the seeds. So we have to be very careful in how we are using our power, because they are looking for excuses to wield theirs against us.
If you're listening to us on YouTube, Spotify, or CreationsPaths.com, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say you can leave a comment, they don't notify us, so we won't know. But you can leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to CreationsPaths.com, click on chat, and you can leave a message there, and we will see it, and we will be able to get back to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars, you can pass our way. We offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both, and you can support us using the Cash App hashtag CreationsPaths. Thank you to everybody who does that. We are ever so grateful. Thank you so much. You all really do help us keep the lights on, keep a roof over our head, and food on our table. If we've ever said anything that's helped you out, please share it with others. That helps us out more than you know.
And before we go, O blessed Jesus, who teaches us the way, inspire us so that we may speak the living word wherever we are, that the word of knowledge and the word of wisdom may never be far from our tongue, and that we may be about the change that this world so desperately needs. May blessing ever fill our heart and grace abound wherever we are. Amen.
Amen.